Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. Fernando?
Today?
Today.
Yes.
I know, it's an F-150, right? Okay.
Yeah, but don't. Just keep watching. Keep watching.
What he said.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll tell you why. But first, the intro. Now let's look at it this way. An F-150, yes, we do a lot of F-150s, we do a lot of Jeep Wranglers, we do a lot of Toyota Tundras. It's just what happens. But this is white, so think of it as a white piece of paper in the sense that what we're gonna do to it and what we're gonna show you today is more of a universal application. It just so happens that it's in an F-150. But if you own an F-150, kudos for you. But if you own something else, the lessons learned today will help you in your car stereo endeavor or give you ideas or just, you know, it's entertaining. Let's go with that. Either way, we have some products we're gonna be putting into this that I'm pretty excited about, mainly because it is something that we can all relate to. This has a factory stereo in it. It totally sucks. However, for one unknown reason, he likes it. Let's hop in. Now at this point in the game, we know that there's a dash kit for this car. We can get rid of this. We can put an 8-inch in the dash, a 7-inch, a floating 9-inch, 10-inch screen, whatever we want. We can replace this and make it go away. However, if it does everything you want, then why would you get rid of it? It's one of those things. It's become the new norm in car audio. If the radio you have works the way you want it to, why do I need to get rid of it? And this one, though, is limited on what it can do. It does what he wants. Plus, he's like, man, I really want it to sound better. I don't necessarily want to spend $1,000 replacing the radio in my dash. I know what you're thinking, $1,000? What? Well, the dash kit for this, no matter who you buy it from, is not cheap. And then you have all the little parts that go with it, so it can add up really quick. He would rather take that money and just make it sound better. Now we know we can make these sound better, but they require a DSP, which there again gets us back up into that big price point. What if there was a product that was affordable, gave us that DSP, gave us that EQ, and then would make this thing sound better? What could it possibly be? Well, in this stack of stuff we're going to put into his car, fast strings, Focal speakers, is this guy right here. The kicker key is perfect for what we're trying to do in this car. Let me explain why. First off, it's stop-start compliant. This car has stop-start. For those of you that aren't familiar with stop-start, and you probably are, but you just don't know that's what it's called, and you have one of those vehicles where you come up to a stoplight and the engine shuts off, and then you hit the gas because the light turns green and it takes off again. That's stop-start. This amp is stop-start compliant. And you say, well, what makes that a special thing? When the car shuts down and starts back up, a lot of the times the electrical system will drop down to 8.5 volts for a split second, and most amplifiers' power supplies see that and go immediately into protection to protect itself, which means they're going to shut off for a split second until they see that voltage rail back up again, and then they'll turn back on. So it's like, no audio, then audio, and so you drive away. This doesn't need any of that. It automatically just keeps playing through the whole thing. The other thing too is that this little guy here has an EQ and a DSP built into it. Now the other nice thing about this amplifier is that it is high level or low level compatible. By simply cutting off these RCNs here, it can integrate directly into your factory radio. With one caveat. If you have a premium sound system already, this really isn't for you. But if you have a standard audio system like this, that's basically a radio and 4 to 6 speakers, meaning there might be a tweeter in there like this car has, but that tweeter is still powered with the door speaker, this is for you. This is gonna make your basic stereo sound like that amplified system that you wish you would have got. As far as the other side of the amplifier, you have your 8 speaker outputs, your ground, your power, and remote. It also comes with a fuse holder. Now this is pretty simple as far as its power requirements go. As you can see, this guy is pretty small. 12 gauge power and ground. We more than enough to power this. For this install though, because we are going to be going way to the back of the vehicle, which we'll talk about in a minute, we're going to be running a dual 10 gauge power and ground. And the reason why we're going to be using a dual 10 gauge power and ground, for those of you that don't know, F-150s, F-250s are now made out of aluminum, which is perfectly fine conductor if that's what you want to use. However, it's not necessarily the fact that it's made out of aluminum, it's how the car is assembled. They glue it together, basically. Some guys have successfully hooked it up, good for them. Run a ground. Especially if you're doing something with an EQ or DSP, just run the ground. One of the really awesome features of the kicker key is how it's programmed. It comes with a microphone in this bag here, and a mount for the headrest, and all the EQ DSP features are done internally by themselves. You just have to play some pink noise, which we're gonna show you how to do. It sets itself and it sounds amazing. Now some of the applications you can use this on is you can do what we like to call a front stage upgrade, which means if you're gonna do a set of components, either like a 2.5, 3.5, or a tweeter up front and then the mid bass down in the door, you can set this up just to run those. There's dip switches here on the side. If you're gonna do what we're gonna do in this car, where we're gonna do front and rear, it'll do that as well. As far as the system that's gonna go in this car, it's gonna be Focal. We're gonna do some universal 6x9 components in the front door, and then we're gonna do a set of 6.5 coaxials in the rear door. And he's also gonna do the fast rings to make sure that we get the most sound into the car from the speakers. As far as integrating with the factory radio, we're gonna use this guy here. This is the Access AX DSP FD2. What comes in this box? A bunch of cables, and what they're used for is Access's DSP. They make the DSP Pro and the DSP Lite, which if you're going to do something other than, let's say, kicker key, and you wanted to integrate in, you could use this to do that. What we like to use it for is just basic integration for any DSP, not necessarily theirs. This is required for their DSP, but for our installation is not. So we can set that aside. We need this guy right here. So how do you know if this one will work on your car? That's a great question. What you need to do first is get the radio out of the dash. If you're installing one of these kicker keys for someone else, or a DSP, any DSP for that matter, for somebody else, which is what we do daily, measure where the seat is when you pull it in. So once you hop in the car, don't, pull it forward or push it back or do anything. Don't adjust the seat. Now if it's too far forward and you're too big, well then do this in the parking lot before you pull it around. But either way, measure the seat's position and measure everything. And don't measure it to the steering wheel, because the steering wheel may move. So measure it to something that doesn't move. In some cars the pedals move, so don't measure it to that. Measure top down, forward, measure where the headrest is, measure everything so that when you're done, like we're gonna slide this thing around because we need to get this car apart, but when we're done we can reuse these measurements to put this seat back exactly where it was when the customer got here. We need to know that because we need to set up our listening system to that, so when he hops in the car, it's like right where it needs to be. Now if you own the car, well that's your problem. And if there's some background noise in the video and you're like, what's going on? Apparently right now we're getting a monsoon. Great day to film, I know. With your radio out of the car, you want to take a look at the harnesses that are there. If you don't know which one is which in your car, unplug them all, take pictures of them, because what you're trying to find is this harness or this harness or this harness. In a Ford, it's this harness that we're looking for. But take pictures of all of them. Once you have the pictures, then what you'll do is you go to those websites and see if you can find the matching harness for your car. In this case, the FD2 is the same looking harness that you're trying to find. That doesn't mean it's pin for pin identical for your car. Now this is an F150 and they haven't changed the harness yet, ever so far, in this particular version of it, and any other version of the Ford for the most part, except for the THX. The THX, totally different. Don't trust that. What you want to do is do a comparison between this harness and the harness in your car. That's where you take a digital multimeter and you try to match up. Really the only thing we're concerned with here are the speaker wires. That's it. Everything else is just a pass-through. So you don't have to worry about the wires that pass through. Those can be whatever they want because it's just a pass-through, which means whatever's here will leave here. We just are worried about the 8 speaker wires. So that limits what you have to test. You only need to test those. And the easiest way to do that is with the digital multimeter set to ohm. And what we're looking for is a 4 ohm or a 3 something load on what would be the speaker wires. Plug in the harness, grab the end that has the speakers, probe into the positive and negative. We get a 4.2, test them all, 4.4, 4.5. If you see something like that, be concerned. The reason why it was giving us that is the driver's front door speaker is out. Next, we're gonna take a tone generator and we're just gonna verify that the colors are what they're supposed to be, meaning gray is the passenger front, green and purple go where they need to. Green is driver's rear, white's driver's front, purple is passenger rear. You can do this also with just taking a 9-volt battery and tapping it to the speaker. That's gray, and it is in fact going over here to the passenger door. We're gonna try green, which is driver's rear, and that is working. And then we'll try purple, and it goes where it needs to go as well. So that means all the speaker wires are going where they're supposed to go. We can indeed use this harness for what we need it to do, which is give us speaker input and speaker output. Basically a T into the radio. Just like trying to find the harness that works on your car, you also need to find the speaker brackets that work on your car. In this case, it's an F150. We're gonna search the internet. There again, we're gonna go to metraonline.com, bestkitsonline.com, and even Scosh sometimes has them. In this case, we have them in stock. It's the BK FSB 1501 6.5 or 6x9 adapters. This is what a factory speaker looks like now. Yeah, sure, it's a 6x9 in the inside, but you can see it's got this giant bracket. And behind it is a giant hole. So it's not like you can just screw a 6x9 into this and call it a day. So what they make are brackets that look just like the factory speakers and take them down to the size that you're trying to put in. In this case, a 6.5, or break this away and you can now do a 6x9, whichever you prefer. When using the factory bracket adapters for the speaker, everything screws into the factory locations and it is screwed in just like the factory. The fast rings now just need to be trimmed so that they're not going to rub into the speaker when the door panel goes on. Then we can get the door panel back on and we can get nice sound coming from the doors. Just like the front door, the rear door is similar. It has this weird shape to it where you can see it's kind of sticking out of the door. There's a funky hole pattern. And though it is round, and you might be able to just screw the speaker into it, it's probably gonna be a little bit too big. Just like the front, we went online. Best Kits makes a part number BKFSB 1502, and that is going to be the speaker bracket to allow you to mount your 6.5 into it. If you'll notice, it has these little break-off tabs. So depending on what size 6.5, if you have a 6, 6.5, 6 3/4, you break those off so that you can mount the speaker into the mount. In this case, this is a 6.5. It's a little too big, so we have to break those tabs off. They easily unsnap using a pair of flat bill pliers. Now our speaker will fit in there perfect. We can get it screwed into the door. As you can see, it also elevates it out so that it'll match up with the door panel. And we're guaranteed a nice fit and finish. And when it's all done and bolted into place, you have a nice speaker upgrade. Perfectly fits to where it needs to go. One tip when you are putting on a fast ring, go around the outside of the speaker. Don't attach it to the top of the speaker. If you attach it to the top of the speaker, you can't get the speaker out if you ever need to do it. You can easily still get to the screws all the way around. Just like the front, test fit it, trim it if it needs to be trimmed, because you don't want it to roll, and get your door panel back on and start enjoying your new tunes. One of the other things you have to be concerned with when integrating into a factory stereo is two things. One, load resistance. Load resistance is the load that the speaker puts on the factory amplifier that in turn the amplifier sees and will either A, play properly, meaning it needs that load on it so that the amplifier just doesn't become unstable and go out of control. In this case, in an F150, if it doesn't see some form of a load, the tweeters go crazy. You could possibly blow the new tweeters you're gonna be putting in because they're just gonna get frequencies they're not capable of playing at a volume that they don't like. In some cars, it just shuts off altogether, meaning you get no sound because it sees it as the speaker might be blown and it doesn't want to damage itself, so it just shuts off. One of the cool features of the kicker key is this little button right here. It says audio detect. You push it in. What this is going to do now is create a load that the radio will see and be like, oh, okay, there's still a speaker attached to me. I can play normal. Now that we know this is the harness that we're going to need to use in the car, there are a few things I like to do to this harness to make it more, user-friendly. You don't have to do anything at this point if you don't want to. The only thing you're concerned with are these two ends right here. This is your output from the factory radio. This is going to go to the input. These here are the amplifier. These are the outputs to the speaker. So that's what these from the amplifier are going to connect up to. You can just leave it like that, cut these ends off and rock on and leave this pigtail alone. I would suggest if you're going to do that though, to insulate all the ends of these wires. I myself don't like to leave this end on there. What I like to do is unravel all this tape and cut all these out, solder the connections back together, and make a new harness that's just designed to integrate with my amplifier. The first step is, of course, getting all this tape off, which usually starts here at the Y section. You just start unraveling. Once you get all the tape off, separate out the speaker wires at this plug end here. And then what you're gonna have left is all these little pieces of shrink wrap all over the place. Remove all those too. Once all that little heat shrink is off, the next step is to remove this harness here from these long wires. Be careful at this junction point and make sure you cut the right one. Once you get it removed, replace the heat shrink that you just cut off of here so that these wires are properly insulated. Come over to these last few remaining wires like here that are also attached and cut them. Each one of these is a little bit different. And this one that's gonna leave this power and ground left over, cut those and you're gonna cap them off. If you have a pin removal tool, pull the pin out, and once at pin level, remove the wire and then reinsert the pin, and it sits in there deep enough to where it won't affect anything. What we end up with after doing all those steps is these nice long 12-inch wires here, shrink wrap replaced, shrink wrap replaced on these. The easiest thing to do in these, cut them, strip them really short, solder them back together so as not to make the harness too tight. And we want to replace the tape that we took off. Now on this end here, that's what this guy is for. You can plug this in. This is your speaker output. So if for any reason you need to unplug your speaker output or the power coming from the amplifier to the existing speakers, let's say you're setting gains or something like that, and you want to make sure all the speakers are disconnected. For replacing the tape, I like to use exterior Tessa tape. They make two kinds. Fuzzy fleece, which is good over like solder points like this area right here. I'm going to put this, that way if I ever need to undo it, I can easily. This is a little bit harder and takes more temperature. The whole harness will be covered in this. With the harness taped back up, I like to put heat shrink on the ends here so that the tape doesn't unravel. But with this done, we can move on to the next portion of the install, which is getting the amplifier mounted in the car. Before we do that, since we're still talking about the harness, this is going to be 100% speaker wire driven, meaning there's going to be wire going back to the amplifier and there's going to be wire coming from the amplifier back to here. To do that, we're going to be using a product that is called Speedwire. There's a couple different companies that make it. This Speedwire is actually the Stinger brand, and it says Speedwire right here on the sleeve. Inside of the Speedwire, which can be cut if you take your razor knife and go down to just one little click, gently go into the exterior sleeve. Now each manufacturer is a little bit different on that exterior sleeve. Stinger uses a super thick 16th inch sleeve. What that means for you is that if you don't want to put tape on it, you don't have to, because this is properly insulated enough. Inside, you're also going to have 9 individually shielded 18 gauge wires. Why 9 is because there's also a remote turn on in here. But the color codes all match up to these color codes here, in that you have a gray set, a green set, a purple set, and a white set, just like we talked about earlier. Once you get the end like this, grab here and grab on this, and you can pull and it will pull itself out. To remove this, there again, take your razor blade and just twist the wire around and score into it. You don't have to cut all the way through except for on the tips. Then you just kind of twist it and it'll tear off. And then you can put some shrink wrap over the end here to make it all finished and looking cool. There's also, in the Stinger, it comes with this little nylon piece. Get that out of the way. And we're gonna be running 2 runs of this. Now keep in mind, this is about the size of a piece of 4 gauge. So you're gonna have 2 runs of 4 gauge along with whatever size power wire you're using. But you may want to go down the opposite side of the car. Don't put this all down one side. Separate it apart for no other reason other than just to handle wire management and how thick this is gonna become. The one thing missing from this install, if you haven't caught on yet, there's no subwoofer. And the reason there's no subwoofer is because this is just phase 1 of the installation. It's just improving the overall sound of the car. This is what the customer wants to do. He also really likes the amp boards that we build back here in the F150s. Plan is to make an amp board that goes here that's big enough to when he decides to upgrade to a subwoofer amp, probably the Kicker Key 501, so they'll match and look cool, and you know, he'll get the DSP settings all the way through. What he would like us to do is make an amp board here and do as much pretty wiring as we can on it, which I'm totally fine with. I totally dig, you know, pretty amplifiers and pretty wiring and all that fun stuff. I'm thinking we probably need to make it about, you know, yay wide, coming over. There's an air vent right here. Probably come about from here up or from here down. It'll screw into this location here and here, and all the wiring will tuck this way and go that way for signal. This area is where the amplifier is going to go. I'm going to make it out of 1/4 inch plastic. I like to go up into this area right here and drill a hole to mount my amplifier. I have seen somebody that actually used this bolt here for an amplifier mount, which isn't a terrible idea, but I'm not gonna do that. So I'm looking at, if I go to where this carpet is so I can make a nice cut, 17¼ tall by 15½. So 17¼ by 15½ will get us the basic shape we need, and then we'll cut some of the other stuff off to make it fit this area. What I want to do is remove this area here and this area here, so that just leaves this top piece that'll screw into this spot here. With the top cut to where we wanted it, we put our amp board against and removed this area of carpet right here, folded it down so that it can be folded back up. Drill a hole here, put a nutsert, a threaded nutsert, so that we can pull it in and out as many times as we need to, and we'll have a nice place to mount our amplifiers as time goes on and he grows his installation. But for right now, we just have the one amp. So let's head over to the bench and get this thing wired up. Set your crossovers to 80 Hertz if it has them. Any bass boost or anything like that, for right now, just turn it down. For the kicker key, we have a bunch of dip switches. First one is going to be 12 volt or DC offset. We want to choose DC offset. DC offset is a 6 volt DC that comes over your speaker lines. Most radios have it, and you can easily test for it. Fader control, we want to leave that on because we are doing front and rear. If we were just going to do a front stage upgrade, of course we turn fader off. Compressor, we're going to turn that on. Bi-amp mode, we're not doing just fronts, so we're gonna leave bi-amp mode off. Kicker EQ, leave that in factory setting, which is EN or engaged. Time delay, factory setting, which is EN or engaged. Next, we're gonna look at our crossovers. Because there is gonna be no subwoofer in the system, for right now, we are gonna leave our crossovers off. They'll play full range. Once we do add a subwoofer, then we have the choice of 60, 80, or 120 for our crossover. Trying to figure out the best location to put it. We could do this, and another amp here, but then I gotta figure out, and like the power wire was for the passenger and I don't want that, so then my immediate thought was to do this. That'll put my gains at the top and easy to adjust, and then I'll have this whole area here for a sub amp if I need one. I can run my speaker wire down and over and cross this, do this type of a you know, install like that, which I think is gonna be the best option. If he goes with the 500.1, it's small too, and there'll be plenty of room, but if he decides to go bigger amplifier, so I wanna kinda keep this over here as much as I can and do the prettiest I can with what we're given in this area. Let's get started. First step is to mount the amplifier. This is ABS. ABS needs to be drilled before you screw into it, or it just really doesn't do a pretty job. Input wires running across here and off to the side. Speaker wires off here going to the side. Power wires going off this way. Earlier when we were talking about the speed wire, we said it doesn't need an insulation, and it doesn't. This insulation is just on here because where this is going to run across the back of the pickup truck, it will be seen, and also there is a jack that's there. We want to make sure that it's triple insulated and there'll be no issues with it where it's at. And then as it goes into the car, the double insulation that it has will be plenty for what it's doing. And then the power wire is ran up and it's sheathing and it's covered the whole way. We have this area here that can be for a future sub amp once he gets around to it, but for right now we're done with this. We're gonna get it into the car. The amp is set in place. I used a black Allen head screw to mount it up and hold it. This is what I was talking about here, this area right here that goes up and behind the jack. It is up behind and it kind of goes up and over and around before it enters into that side panel. Because it's going to be exposed here, that's why I go ahead and sheath it. Once it gets down and around, it comes into this nice trough right here. You can see where the power wires run up towards the front of the vehicle. It does the same way. They have all these zip ties in place that you can run up underneath into this trough. Right now it's waiting to go up through the firewall. On the other side of the car where the speaker wires run, same trough, zip tied here, zip tied here. There's this indentation right in this area. So the wire basically comes up through this and then down behind the panel below the seat belt. And then follows the same path as the power wire did on the other side. Underneath the factory zip ties up and into the area zip tied here. And then we're going to get it up and across and over into the dash. Wire is into the dash. If you noticed during the installation video, there was a white 5-star piece and then there was a gray 5-star piece. And if you look back here at the amplifier, you'll notice up here at the top there's the white 5-star piece, and then on the bottom down here is the gray 5-star piece. The reason it's like that is so that I know at a glance which one is signal in and which one is signal out. The white at the top is my signal coming from my radio, so that would be signal in, and the gray on the bottom is signal out, so that's going to be off going into the factory speaker wiring. And that represents that here, gray out to wiring, so this is going to go like this, and then this is going to come out of here and go back in. Now that this is all taken care of, we can get the radio back up in place and get this center console put back together, and we'll head out here and look at the fuse. And as per normal, Fernando has way overbuilt the fuse holder in the car. For this, it just uses a little inline 20 amp fuse off of the 10 gauge. And he built a whole mount to hold it and left enough room so if we do another amplifier, there will be room for it. So our ground wire is also connected. All that done, that means now it's time to get the microphone in place. So let's go talk about that for a minute. Now inside the box for the kicker key is the key instruction manual. It is divided into a couple different languages. The top one is English. You also have the microphone and the microphone holder. How this is designed to work, I like to thread my microphone through here. And then this is going to sit on top of the headrest just like this, and this is going to plug into the amplifier. On the wire is this, which is the activation button. To activate it for setup, you need to have all the speakers in the car that are not connected to the kicker key be disconnected. So subs, rear fill if you have them, fade it to the front, disconnect the subwoofer, anything you got going on other than what's powering the key. Pink noise, you're gonna need a track for pink noise. If you need a track for pink noise, on the box here, you can scan this. This will take you over to Kicker's site. On there, they have a downloaded pink noise track that you can get to use. You're going to press this quickly. It'll start beeping, telling you to get out of the vehicle. You have 10 seconds to exit the vehicle. Make sure the engine's off. Make sure the windows are rolled up, and make sure you're quiet. Turn off your phone. Don't make any noises. Go into the other room. Let it do its thing. When it's done, you'll hear happy sound beeps, or you'll hear, you know, like you lost beeps. If you hear those, you did something wrong. Go back and figure out what it is. If you get the happy beeps, you're done. You can move on to the next thing. Press this once. When you're done with everything, the joy of it is you can toggle between this and you can turn on and off what it did and what it didn't do. You can hear the factory system just amplified. Press it again. You can hear the factory system EQ'd and DSP. On the side of the amplifier, like we showed you earlier, if you decide you don't like one or the other, meaning you don't like the time alignment, you can just flick that switch and that'll shut that off. You can turn off the EQ, you can turn off compression, you can turn off whatever you want or leave on whatever you want. On the amplifier where the dip switches are is also where your microphone will plug in. Make sure it's plugged in all the way. Before you start the test, make sure you put your driver's seat where it needs to be, and also put the rest of the seats in the interior back to the way it is going to be most of the time. Like he had his armrest folded down, fold that down. We need to fold these back seats back up. Make sure everything's the way it's going to be when it's driving down the road. Before you start the process, one thing they don't talk about in the instructions is go into the radio settings. Make sure that your treble, mid, bass, balance, fader, they're all set to their 0 points. If they're not, this could totally screw up the way this amplifier reads the signals in the car. Ours are all zeroed out. We have a pink noise track downloaded to our phone. Turn it up to a normal listening level. Make sure your doors are unlocked. No, I gotta activate it. We press the mic, we have our beeps, we got 10 seconds. I always look at the doors, every door, make sure they're all unlocked. how it starts. Shh. And that's the sound we were hoping to hear. Press the mic button. Turn the system back down. Now is when the magic happens. We get to hear if this worked. Grab your microphone off your headrest, pull it forward so you can get to that little switchy knob. One little hint if you are gonna be using your phone so you don't have to redo it, put it in sleep mode or nighttime mode or whatever it is so that it doesn't make any noises and interrupt the test tones that are happening. Learned that one the hard way, of course. We'll go back to some music. And what you're gonna do is you're going to play a song that has a good, you know, something you're comfortable with that you've heard before, has a good center image, sounds good. And then you just A/B between the two. It's really cool, I'm not gonna lie. It's really cool. I love doing this part of this. If you can do it for a customer or for yourself, whichever works, it's so fun. Let's get Fernando in here and we'll play with him. Fernando, please hop in the car, kind sir. Stop eating your chips, man. Dude, is it kind of freaky, Ruffles? Like chicken wing? Have you noticed how close they're getting to actually tasting like chicken wings? It's pretty crazy. He didn't even wait for me. We're gonna A/B ya.
You can hear right away how, like, you know, it's right here and then it's like gun. Yeah.
It goes from like 4 speakers, real basic sounding, to soundstage.
Yeah.
You know, everything just kind of. See, that's what happened. That's that noise I was talking about. Someone texted me. The sound being just
like right here. It's
way
like,
up in the front.
It's in the front stage.
Yeah.
You know, like.
Sounds fabulous. If you got a factory radio, basic, non-frilly, and you're like, man, I just wish it was a little bit louder, it sounded a little better, there was some imaging, just something, and you're gonna add a set of speakers, pick yourself up a kicker key, throw it in there, and you will not be disappointed. I have yet to have anyone go, really? I mean, no. But with that, that's it for today, guys.
On to the next one, guys.
We hope you enjoyed this one as always. You have a wonderful night. Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. I screwed up the ending. All right, whatever. All right, guys, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Ugh. I got something on my head.